Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power Ballads. Today, I'm excited to have our guest. I'm going to exit that. This is the first time I've done that, Brad, where I've just been like, nope, we're going to restart.
I didn't do anything yet. I
It
didn't I
was
didn't say
me.
anything. This is gonna be great.
Good.
Power.
Good.
Power.
Good. Power. Good. Power. Good.
Power.
Good.
Power.
Good. Good. Power. Good. Power. Good.
Hello, everyone.
Good.
Special welcome to Brad MacAfee, who is the owner and CEO of Mission and Cause. You tell me, Brad, what exactly the title is that you would like. But Brad is also my former boss. We've worked together for many years at Porter Novelli, and I'm just really excited to have you here, Brad, to talk about good power and about how we can unleash some power and positivity into the world. So, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Missy. I appreciate it. It's great to spend time with you. Anyone who knows the two of us or worked with the two of us, I doubt they would say that you reported to me. They would probably say it was the other way around, but that is fine. I'm glad to be here.
I thought I would at least try to like officially put that out there, but for those who don't know, they could be like, wow, okay, Missy actually listened to somebody. Anyway, uh, so, so Brad, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about Mission and Cause and what you've been up to lately.
Well, thank you. Mission and cause, our whole reason for being, our whole goal is to help organizations in the communication space, either on the brand side or agencies, try to reach their greatest potential. That is our whole entire goal. Some of that is done through consulting and helping unlock or really take on some challenges that the organization may have. And other aspects of it are about getting the right people. So we provide a lot of executive search capabilities and offerings to our clients.
I love it. I love how the evolution of the work that you did, and you really established the sort of essence of Porter Novelli's purpose, kind of focus, while you were CEO there, and were somebody that you are somebody that leads by example. And I think always were able to really articulate the passion and the opportunity behind purpose, understanding that organizations, through the power of communication, have a real opportunity to make an impact. So it's neat to see how you've been able to evolve that and help through a variety of ways today. What would you say are some of the most kind of interesting challenges you've had or opportunities you've had in helping unlock organizations' potential?
Yeah, well, you know what I find really enjoyable, this is probably not going to be any kind of surprise whatsoever to you, is when we get into the people side of the business. That's where quite frankly I get really excited, because if we think about it, if we get the right people on our team, anything becomes possible, right? I mean, Jim Collins used to, right, start with people first, the right people on the right seats of the bus. I would add a bit to that, and one of the things that we're trying to do is, can we get good values alignment with the individuals that you're trying to bring into your organization? I mean, how many times, especially in this communications industry that you and I have participated in for years, how many times have we seen an absolute rock star, has a great reputation, everyone knows this person, and then they move to another company and they're gone in 6 months? I just fundamentally do not believe that that individual suddenly lost skills and capabilities and leaderships, but usually it's because that's where the interviewing was, and that's where everyone put their time, energy, and effort is around the skills and the capabilities. But what if we looked at in terms of values alignment or purpose alignment? That's where usually we have challenges, right? Every single organization has both written and unwritten rules of how we are successful here, how we get along here, how we amplify and elevate each other here. And when you're off that, it can really look like a puzzle piece that just doesn't fit, and the picture is going to be distorted. And that's where you start to have challenges. So one of the things we really do, the assignments I've enjoyed the most have been when we're really unpacking the job description to find out what are those key elements that we're really looking for. And then when we're able to bring candidates that meet that requirement, we just see an organization that's going to blossom as a result.
What's really powerful about how you've described that is in thinking about values alignment. It strikes me that, we've really tried to intentionally move away from talking about culture fit, because
Right.
that used to be, right, the sort of shortcut to trying to see if somebody's going to be the right fit. But unfortunately, with culture fit, that too often is, I want somebody that's just like us.
Right.
And then you miss out on the diversity. But so instead of talking about culture, talking about values and purpose, and that alignment is so much deeper and allows you to still bring in the diversity of perspectives, experiences, life experiences, but you can still have a similar alignment in terms of your values and purpose.
That's right. And quite frankly, if there's that foundation of values, then
Hmm.
as diverse as we want to be on top of that, to your point, really elevates an organization, right? Because the diversity of thought or the diversity of perspective or backgrounds when we're coming together and creating actually could take you somewhere really, really cool and unique, and maybe even areas where you'd never anticipated before. That's where I think it gets exciting. To your point, culture fit is loaded in a lot of different ways, but also to your point, you don't want a homogenous organization. How are you going to really excel in the marketplace if everyone is thinking the same exact way? So I agree with you 100%, but it shows up very tangibly in an organization.
I imagine though, the thing is, like, with a lot of norms and values, so much of the is implicit. So by working with your clients, you're able to help them, I imagine, be able to sort of take what's just in the air and actually, codify that and make it a little more explicit or clear. Do you find that the same is true for the individuals? So that those who are, looking to get placed, um, how likely is it that the people you're working with, that they are able to articulate their values or their purpose?
It's interesting you ask it the question that way. Um, Here's the thing that's really interesting. Nearly every single candidate that we work with, nearly everyone in some way is talking about values. They're talking about the essence of an organization and wanting to make a difference,
Hmm.
maybe a difference in their company, maybe a difference in society, but this comes up nearly 100% of the time, and it's usually in the top three priorities. The the bigger question that I think you're asking is articulating it. We still have a little bit of room to grow there, but not only that, I
Hmm.
think it's also truly understanding does this organization's values, does this how this organization runs, their way, their approach, what their priorities are, what their purpose is, where their mission is and their vision, where it's going. Are they able to clearly say, I see the alignment here? Sometimes we have to
Hmm.
jump in and help visualize that for them. This is
Yeah.
what you've told us, and this is what we've heard, and this is what this opportunity has. We see alignment here. Do you? Right? And it's a
Right.
very personal thing to get a new job because it's putting you on your career path or continuing you on a career path. It's really,
Hmm.
really important. So we like to be a guide, but we are very sensitive to not influence because
Okay.
just like you're an incredibly influential person, and how you talk and how you can position things can really shift somebody's thinking about an opportunity, but maybe that's not perfect for them or not right for them
Hmm.
because we're bringing our own biases or our own stuff to that conversation. So we have to really present things in a fair, balanced way, but in a way that our candidates can maybe see through it, and maybe they can see, yeah, that does align, especially when we see it so clearly. So it's a delicate balance where you don't want to
Yeah,
oversteer, because I think that could really not be great for a person's career if we do that.
it's a really good point. It's reminding me of something that we share in common. We share a number of things in common, but one of them is our our top strengths from Clifton Strengths, and I believe we both have positivity in our top five and belief in our top five. I know for me personally, what I've had to learn over time is that if not harnessed, that sense of I just know this is the right thing for this person and I can see exactly how this will work out, you know, yeah, I can actually absolutely put everything behind kind of steering somebody, towards that. So being able to step back and let them sort of process it, you can still show some of the opportunities and you can still, you know, encourage, but yeah, that line between letting them discover on their own and find what's right for them versus trying to push it in. I yeah, still sometimes struggle with that.
Sure, it's a delicate balance for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so well, I just brought up strengths. So here's what I want. We've been talking about kind of the power and purpose of mission and cause and the work that you're doing. And I love that it is really about both unleashing the power of unleashing the power of an organization, unleashing the power and potential of an individual, all for good. But now I want to turn a little bit more personal and
Sure.
ask, what's your superpower? We, often think about kind of from an organization. We've worked ages on like branding campaigns and helping to articulate that for companies, but and I know it could be a little, uncomfortable to be asked, like, what's your superpower? But as you've worked in a variety of different contexts and just and gone through a lot of different things, what is it that you think is kind of that power that you have that you can use for good?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is weird. It's a little awkward of a question to have to answer about yourself. There's a lot of things that I wish were my superpower. I really do. And you know me well enough. I wish I was an amazing creative that could see really big campaigns, or I wish I had the ability to just pull insights out of a bag like people do and stuff. That's not my greatest strength. I'm a connector. In the end, I connect, and I would say two things. I connect people, and I can connect the dots. And connecting the
Hmm.
dots is what's relevant business wise, what's relevant for this nonprofit, what's relevant for this individual, where can the connections amplify and make something that's bigger than the original whole. And I think it's what I love to do. And I think, quite
Hmm.
frankly, it's ended up being foundational for this chapter that I'm in right now with mission and cause. But I think that's what I love to do more than anything. And today it gets that need or that real passion that I have. I get to spend time typically with 7 to 10 people every single day that I may not know before that day.
Wow.
And so, when you're kind of passionate about that, and then you have all these, I mean, the only downside about mission and cause that is I want to hire them all myself. Like I meet all these great people, right? Because I think one of the things you and I have always also had is we can see the strength first versus
Hmm.
seeing, oh, this, if I were grading the person on a whole. No, no, no. Like there are times where you see somebody's strength, their superpower, and you know what that can mean to an opportunity, a client, an organization, how they could show up. And to me, like there's nothing richer and more exciting, because you just kind of start to think of what's possible. I might give you one small example. We were doing a search, And we were asked to look for a mid-level head of digital for an agency based out on the West Coast. And we also knew that this particular organization had growth aspirations to be on both coasts and that kind of thing. And quite frankly, our first response to the brief, we blew it. I mean, because we brought a a chief digital officer based on the East Coast, not a mid-level digital expert based on the West Coast, right? So right off the bat, you could think we're way off brief. Why would we do this? But when we were listening to the client and listening to the bigger, broader aspirations of the organization, and then knowing who we'd been talking with, we saw an
Mhm.
opportunity to say, we might have a bigger play here for you that might mean more to your business long term than what you're asking us originally to do. Now, of course, we're not
Yeah.
going to do that with every single search because some searches are very clean and clear. It's like we need one of these, and you go out and you find the best version of that and the most diverse site that you can. But other times, you just look and you go, if we connect these dots, there might be something that's bigger and broader and has more potential for success than what we originally thought. That's the kind of thing that really I think drives a lot of our passion at Mission and Cause.
Yeah. Well, you're able to see what could be, and what's possible in that too. I think that's one of the things I've always loved about being on a consultant rather than in-house. I think it just helps to give you some of that perspective, right? Being able to kind of step out and then interacting with and talking with so many different people, you're just getting ideas. I remember you introduced to the organization when we worked together the Medici effect, and it just comes to mind right now as we're talking about that, right?
Yeah.
If you
Franz
remember, not to put
Johansson.
you on this, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so for our listeners,
Yes.
tell them a little bit about the Medici effect.
So Franz Johansson is the author, and if you get an opportunity, even though it was published maybe some 10 years ago, I would encourage everyone to take a look. It's a great book, and it's really around a forcing principle around diversity. That if you want to get to the biggest potential, biggest creative idea, the best solution possible, having a team that looks, thinks, acts, and has all the same kind of background with itself will get you perhaps incrementally better than where you are. But a forcing function is to take groups that are completely from different backgrounds, different walks, have all this different skills, attributes to them, and you put them in a room to solve a problem, and you see really, really creative things come out. And that's where usually you get paradigm shifts because somebody is bringing maybe a perspective from a completely different industry and they're thinking about the problem from a perspective that nobody else would have been able to have seen because they didn't have that lived experience. And so there's a lot more to the book, but I think he does just such a great job of bringing it down and making it very practical on how do we really get to something that is breakthrough and more innovative and creative.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds me too that, as you bring together these different and diverse perspectives, having some underlying, well, again, kind of some common values or a shared purpose and where you're trying to get to, but also just a commitment to candor and transparency and just being willing to like lean into the whole process, even though sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable and you're not always going to agree, but it's in those healthy tension and moments that I think you get to, as you're saying, the breakthrough ideas.
Yeah.
You and I would never know anything about tension or conflict and brainstorms or things like that. But see, that was the magic.
That was the magic. That was the magic. Sometimes you need, I mean, that one of the things that is a little bit challenging and I will say more so today as well. We do a bit of um, coaching as well with some of the folks that are part of this, a communications department or an agency. And the generation that is coming in now, the Gen Z, and maybe starting to get some little bit of management responsibility for maybe one individual or not. We're hearing time and time again about complete conflict avoidance and not wanting to give candid feedback, but we also know on the flip side of it that roughly 67% of all people want and desire feedback. And so even those who are reluctant to want to give feedback to another, when you ask them, they want feedback, right? But then how to have those conversations. And I've had people say, can I not just Slack them? And I'm like, no, some of this is more personal. We have to
Mhm.
demonstrate that we care and what and we're being intentional with the feedback we're given. But it also doesn't have to be long. I mean, these are important dialogues and conversations. They don't have to be hour-long lunch meetings where we squeeze in the feedback at the last 5 minutes when we've received the check. I mean, there's real intention around this to help everyone improve. So
Mhm.
yeah, we see a lot of different things for
Yeah.
sure.
Remember the days of on the border. If you got invited to on the border for lunch, it was you ended up going over there with a stomach ache rather than like an anticipation.
Yeah, yeah. Those were not hunger
Those
pains.
those were not hunger pains. Those were like, oh, what am I going to be told? I like to encourage people to really focus first on building that relationship and building the rapport so that when it comes to those moments where you do need to give some corrective feedback, it doesn't have to be this long, drawn out thing. You just be like, hey, can I give you some feedback? And
That's exactly
they're not
right.
going to question where it's coming from or, what your motivation is because you've already invested in that relationship.
Well, Missy, you have long, and this is one of the things that I so appreciated when we were together at Porter Novelli. You really had this true understanding around the role that safety plays in a work environment. If I feel safe, I'm going to be more productive at work. And we may use different words to describe that, but that trust element, if I'm feeling safe, I could take my guard down and listen to the feedback that I'm supposed to receive and maybe take action on. But if I don't feel safe, or if I don't have trust with my supervisor, then I'm hearing that feedback maybe through a lot of different lenses or filters. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm even more at risk now. Or what do you think that meant? And now I'm getting more anxious and I'm more concerned. That foundation, that bedrock of trust and safety will also be an accelerant. You can start to shorthand
Mhm.
conversations. You can have those more brief direct feedback and candid feedback sessions because everybody knows that we're not going to extremes like, oh, here's a performance improvement plan and
Yeah.
things like that. But
Yeah.
we're now working on our careers together and how we can be better and improve. And it's almost as if the manager or whoever's given the feedback is giving a gift because they're taking their time out to say, hey, I think you can even do this a little bit differently and try this. And you're
Mhm.
so and so much is caveated today that it's hard to even find the feedback, right? You're like trying to pick it out. I think it was right there between all the other words. And
Yeah.
I just think that we're missing this in our in the business today where the feedback sessions are um they're just not going as well as they could be.
Yeah. And I think the biggest challenge we have too is people just avoid it.
Yes.
Managers just avoid having a conversation. And so one of the things I've seen sometimes is if I come in as a coach or, doing trainings on management, then it's kind of like, well, Missy, can you tell the person? I'm like,
No,
no.
no, no.
That is not going to be the best thing
Yeah.
here.
But the other thing
Nobody
that
likes to be
might
talked about.
That's right. Well, you're right. Nobody
Yeah.
likes to be talked. But the other thing that has surprised me a bit, and is when I've engaged with some of some leaders on the agency side. They're
Hmm.
not all agencies have more formalized processes to get feedback from the client. And you, when asked, you see, usually somebody asks, but and I think this avoidance, I go back and I think, yeah, but sometimes when you address those elephants that might be in the room, or
Hmm.
even worse, if you don't know that there's an elephant in the room, but your client knows that there is one, and it's going to serve as a barrier in the relationship, and it may even put that relationship at risk. You just got to ask. And I know that it takes a lot of courage to ask. It could drive a lot of anxiety to ask. But once you know, then you can address what potential issue might be there. And I don't know. My experience has been more times than not, they're usually not very large elephants. They might seem like it, but once you hear it, you go, oh, well, we could make that adjustment or this adjustment. We thought you liked that. We didn't know this is how you like communication. This is, like, it's usually
Hmm.
not a huge thing, but it festers into one if never addressed. And so I think this whole issue of avoiding feedback is I think it can be really damaging.
I think so too. And it doesn't help that so much of our communications are mediated now, so you can be via text or email, or, I mean, even picking up the phone to talk to somebody seems, you know, like something nobody's comfortable with anymore. you know, I'm going to spend hours figuring out how to perfectly word an email when you could have a 5-minute conversation and get at the heart of what is the concern, or just, even to say, hey, listen, I sensed in our last meeting that, you may not have been as pleased with something, or that something, didn't seem right. Boom, get to it,
Yeah.
find out, and then you don't have to worry about, because and because I think we came up in the PR industry too, I can't help but think about, like, what's in writing and how that could come back and out of context or in other ways. So it's, instead of spending all of that time trying to write a perfectly crafted email that is, trying to kind of get it, like, I think something might be, but I don't want to suggest that something's wrong, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just have a conversation. Like, where's the humanity, people?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, goodness. Okay, I want to ask you something. So we're talking about your superpower of really being a connector and just kind of thriving on seeing sort of the potential and the opportunities. As you reflect on that, are there people or moments in time that you think have helped you in really honing in, or like discovering sort of what that gift is, and what that superpower is? We were talking before that sometimes we have these things and we do these
Yeah.
things, but we don't recognize them as being something that is special and something that can be really our superpower. So, yeah, just thinking about kind of who or what may have helped you focus in.
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
I'm gonna, we'd have to go get into a time machine a bit, but when I reflect on this, I think it really started to show up when I was really 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. And this is not going to be unique to any of your, viewers or anything like that, but I was the guy who pulled everyone together. We were doing things in the neighborhood all the time, and it was, I would make all the phone calls. Those people that would, the people that I'd reach out to play, baseball, or get a soccer game or a football game together, one of those things. Anyone who would say, nah, I don't feel like it today, 5 minutes later they were, cleating up. and they would be there too. And that doesn't surprise you at all. But I just really early, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
I would convene groups, right, and people, and felt really
Mhm.
comfortable doing that and leading that. And I don't know if that's the origin of how I really got involved in this and started this, but it's been something that's kind of followed me throughout my career. Of like, I really do like to pull groups together.
Mhm.
It's just something that I find unbelievably enjoyable. I do it not just in my professional life, which is an economic thing for me as well, but
Mhm.
I was out with a bunch of folks last night because I was like, oh, this person should be hanging out with us, and we all know each other, know of each other, and so we had essentially three couples together last night. But this is just, it like doesn't stop. I think when you're
Yeah.
kind of like how certain people can always see a great message or always see something bigger, like you just,
Mhm.
everything starts to look like one of those opportunities when you're, at least the only way I know how to be and act is if I'm having coffee with somebody and I hear something, and I might remember that 2 months ago I heard something from another organization. You're in the same town. Let me put you guys together, just because, and not because
Right.
I'm going to get anything out of it other than satisfaction that the two of them might find something to do together, or maybe it helps solve one of their problems. But I love that aspect of just
Yeah.
living in everyday life. I mean, that's just kind of one of the things that motivates me.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So what advice would you have for and I'm going to say like folks across their point in time in their career
Yes.
for them to help kind of uncover and discover what their superpowers are? And I ask this because as we're talking, I'm thinking about several different pieces of advice you've given to me and to others that, in our teams, at our office, that have just been so helpful. And so I thought maybe you have some pearls of wisdom to share when it comes to uncovering or discovering superpowers.
Well, thanks for that. I mean, first thing I would say is ask others around you. Others will
Mm,
also know others are experiencing your superpowers, right? And so often they can help you articulate if you're, because when you're self-reflective, you think of it as strengths, right? And then but somebody can say, no, no, that strength is actually bigger and broader than just a strength. It's really embodies you, and it really is your superpower. So one, I'd ask others. The second the second element is we encourage people when they're going through a job search, right? We've taken part of the Tom DeLonge model around. You may recall Tom DeLonge. He's a Harvard professor now, and he's got one of his books was Flying Without a Net, and it was all around career and managing your own career and repotting yourself after 7 years, and some of these great principles that a lot of people know. But he had this Venn diagram about what are you best at, what do you love to do, and what can you make money doing. And in the center, the whole idea is if you do that, you'll never work a day in your life, right? And
mhm.
maybe Tom in his book was replaying that from somebody else, but that's where I remember seeing it and experiencing it. We've added, and where can you make an impact? And
Mm,
when we start to look at those four instead of just three, that where you can make an impact is essentially kind of where what so intrinsically motivates you that
mhm.
it's right for you, and then you add all these other elements together, and we think that right in the middle is probably a superpower. Not just a superpower, but it really starts to define individual purpose and what you're all about. So
Mhm.
those are just a couple thoughts I might offer up.
I think that's really brilliant. And I do think getting other people's perspectives. I was doing an exercise with some for, and I think the prompt was just to say, what three words describe you, and again, like in that way, even just posing that, or with a team, kind of getting that input from one another to see like what are the three words that come to mind, to describe that person is can be really powerful. I know some of the feedback I've gotten, I've thought, oh, I don't know that I would have thought of it this way, and yet that feels true to who I am. So,
I would caution one thing, not on what you're saying, but on an earlier point I was making about getting other people to give you some thoughts. Um, Sometimes you can get frozen in time with an individual, so you have to be
yeah.
careful about who you ask. Because I will tell you, if I ask somebody who worked with me in the early 2000s, they might give me, I think your key strengths are this, or I think your superpower is this. If I ask somebody, from 5 years ago, they may say, here's where I think your superpower is. And if I ask my team today, they may say, here's how you, right? And it's not to say that a superpower is ever changing, but the inputs on what we get will change based on who's sharing it with you, and what part of your journey did you intersect with that individual, right? And I see that all too often on the candidate side, because we'll get people that'll say, here's a reference, and the reference will be from 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and we're always trying to say, give us a reference within the last 3 to 5 years, right? Just so it's a little bit more tangible, a little bit more. And some people, if it's 15 plus years, they're going to remember you how you were then. Well, my 30-year-old self is much different than my 50-plus-year-old self. Right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of advice that I would give that 30-year-old, but
yes.
right? And so sometimes you could just, I guess the caution is, make sure you know also who you're getting inputs from as well.
Yeah, that reminds me of, that's so wise. It first makes me think about the first time I was exposed to coaching, and we did this across kind of our leadership team in the Atlanta office, and that was hard. I felt like that coach, her approach was break her down and then rebuild, and that was very painful.
Right.
I think it was probably as much on me of just, I just took everything at face value and equal weight, so much so that I'm kind of like, I don't know what to do with all of this information, and this feedback.
Right.
And then learning over time of like, okay, you do have to, listen to the feedback with some of your own judgment as well.
Right.
And feedback is something that, while you should always want to receive it, you don't always have to take it or put it into effect. And so understanding sort of and discerning that. But then the other thing too of just, I so believe in like continual growth and evolution. And the worst thing I think I could hear is if oh, you're just the same as you were, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago.
Right.
I think, the core person that I am is the same, but I know certainly that the things I see as my superpowers today, I used to think were my weaknesses in the past.
That's interesting.
And was even in feedback given to me describes that you're too nice. Missy, you're too nice.
Right.
And that used to just, okay, I've got to be, and there was truth to that in the sense that I could be more direct. I could be, I could lean into things some more. But compassion and being and sort of, as we were talking before, seeing people's strengths first and their potential first. Yeah, I've come to embrace that wholly. I'm like, there's not enough of that in the world. I don't want to let go of that.
Right.
And if some might describe that as too nice, well, let me pull apart and see what really might need fine tuning, because on the whole, I want to bring this kind of optimism and positivity to the world. So yeah, having some discernment when getting that feedback is important.
And first off, what a great topic to bring up, because in that, as well as in nice, I want to be positive. I want to be kind. I want to be compassionate. I want to have empathy. So if the shortcut of you saying nice equals these elements,
Hmm.
I'm not listening. I'm not going to listen. I'm comfortable. But if what you're really trying to say with nice is, we need you to be more aggressive. We need you to really push the business further. Really try to get more out of your team. Okay, let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
But sometimes we shortcut these key learnings and stuff through language that is just not big enough or not rich enough or quite
Yeah.
frankly not specific enough for
Hmm.
us to really understand what you're trying to get to, because I don't want to give up all these elements of being nice. But if you're saying you want to see them in the context of better business performance, okay. I don't think that those two have to be separate. I don't think you can
Yeah.
be strong at business performance but can't be nice. I mean, that's ridiculous. So, but I need to understand where that feedback's really coming from and what you're really trying to
Hmm.
tell me before I put it through my own lens, right? Because when you're somebody like yourself who's kind, empathetic, compassionate, all that, if you hear somebody saying, I need you to be less nice, you're going to drift to your core of what that means, what nice means to you.
Hmm.
And they may be talking about something completely different. They may be talking about performance based issues, not your own performance, but business performance issues,
Right.
right? So language, which we both know. I mean, my lord, Michael Maslansky, right? It's not what you say, it's what they hear, which I am still convinced after reading that book how many years ago now. I still say that line at least at minimum once every single week, because I
Hmm.
do think we forget that communication has two elements. There's a giver and a receiver, and in
Exactly.
between the two is a lot of interpretation, a lot of hearing with my own background and my own,
Mhm.
stuff that may have happened to me. And that's why sometimes when we hear political speeches and we have two groups and one group goes, "Oh my gosh, that knocked it out of the park. Was that one of the best State of the Unions you've ever heard?" And then you talk to somebody else who goes, "Wow, that was dark. It was uncomfortable. I think this is tragic." You go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Time. It's the same
Yeah.
speech." So what's different about the speech is we have two different receivers, right? And so
Mhm.
I think in communications we got to be so intentional, especially when we're talking about career paths and feedback and engaging with
Yeah.
our colleagues or engaging with clients or our internal clients. Like, how do we make sure that we reduce that potential of misinterpretation and truly everyone is on the same page when we walk away?
Absolutely. This reminds me too of the power of questions in that whole process. So again, thinking about how all of communications is, bi-directional. So as I'm sharing something, even just stopping to say, "Hey, what are you hearing?"
Yeah.
And get that kind of synced up alignment. Or how do you feel about what I've shared? What of that feels accurate? What are you struggling with? Just to open up so that you can get to the words and the descriptors that can be used.
Yeah, good point. Very good
I
point.
think I have to just put in one little, plug for when it comes to gender communication as well. This is so important.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that women tend to get less specific feedback when it comes to performance reviews. And they'll get the, "You're too nice. You need to be more assertive." But there's not a descriptor. What are the behaviors that characterize that,
Yeah.
so that you actually know what you can work on? And whereas, and sometimes maybe it's just I don't know exactly what underlies it. I'm not going to try to hypothesize because I'll go way off board. Uh, but just, I think, not assuming that somebody understands exactly what you're saying or thinking, but just checking in and then trying to provide those examples that back up and sort of, create a clearer picture.
Well, and let's, I mean, not to take this too far, but we're in the holiday season, right? And so you start to think through families and how families are communicating. And there's,
Mhm.
some families are going to have a lot of stress this holiday season, right? And some will have tension in that. And 90% of that's going to come down to communication. What was communicated in the past, what wasn't communicated in the past, what was assumed should have been or wasn't, all those different dynamics. And how frequently do you see family members say, wait, pause here, let me check in with you. How are we feeling about this, right? I mean, because usually swords come out and things like that. But to your point, what if we did check in? What if we pause long enough? Are you hearing what I'm trying to communicate or not?
Mhm.
What are you hearing in this? And I think we'd clear up a lot of misconceptions and or some issues, even in the home, not just in the office.
So true. So true. I'm going to remember that. I think the advice I would give myself thinking about the upcoming holiday season is I could probably do well by saying less and listening more. I tend to get myself into more trouble the more I say. So,
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I listen. I agree with you 100% on that. What what would it look like if we all just asked each other questions about the other person and showed genuine human interest in the other first and foremost? I mean, I think it's really hard for somebody to get wildly upset if you're asking them questions about how well they're doing and how
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's good. Well, Brad, I appreciate you
yes,
taking all this time. As we close, one
yes,
question I like to ask all of my guests is, and I think this one is probably particularly dear to your heart, but what is your power song? If you
yes.
had a song that really kind of just and either kind of gets you going or centers you, or however you want to define a power song, what would
Yeah.
that be?
Well, I of course appreciate the question. I love music so much. Um, I joke around saying, "Hey, my power song is a flower song," but it is a flower song. My power song is a flower song, and I really love songs that have vision and a vision of a greater tomorrow or a better
Mm,
place. That's just kind of my thing. And so like we all look at it, John Lennon's Imagine as an example, and like talk about a vision anthem. What would the
hmm
world look like if there were no countries, if there were no, right? I mean, like, just it's a vision. My power song is Scarlet Begonias by the Grateful Dead, which is so out of character. I'm not a Deadhead. I've never seen a show, but this is my favorite song on the planet, because I think it takes what John Lennon had as a vision and it
hmm
brings it down to a practical. And there's a line in the song that simply says, "Strangers stopping strangers just to shake their hand." And if you
mm
think about if we're going to imagine a better world, what if it just starts with saying hello to somebody you don't know? What if you just connect with somebody? And I would just simply say right now, in this moment, the things that get me more inspired than anything, whether it's listening to a podcast or seeing something on social media, is kindness from one human to another.
mm.
I will watch those. I will engage with them because I'm just looking to say it shouldn't be this uncommon. We're all human beings on this, earth together at one time. And I love this concept of take a time to check in with somebody else. And then what would that look like, let alone what it might blossom into a friendship or potential that you've never thought of before. So that's my power song.
Ah,
And by the way,
that's
as you might
amazing.
as you might recognize, it does have the basic definition of connecting in there.
Well, it's beautiful and inspiring, but it is so true to your own good power. So thank you for that.
And thank you,
Well,
Missy. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed this
absolutely.
conversation.
Hey, I'm glad. I've enjoyed it too, and I will. I will include a few of our outtakes, just a couple giggles
Yeah, I'm sure you
in
will.
there because it just wouldn't feel authentic otherwise. All right. Thank you
Perfect.
and have wonderful holidays.
You as well. And to all of your viewers and listeners, I hope they have a wonderful holiday season as well.
Power.
Good. Power. Good. Power. Good.
Power. Good. Power.
Good. Good. Power. Good. Power. Good.
Power. Good. Power.
Good.